Picture the scene. A shopping cart piled with groceries. Small hands place bags, boxes, and cans on the checkout counter. The cashier remarks to the mom about having her hands full. She observes the gaggle of kids with blonde, brown, and black hair. Some of them have tan skin, others are fair. Very few of them look like their mom. Are they all yours? The cashier inquires. Yes, says the mom with a smile. Some of them came into our family through adoption. The mom continues by way of explanation. The cashier remains confused, then thoughtlessly asks, as she scans the groceries, why would you adopt if you could have your own? The dialogue and others are all too common as people reveal their own confusion about adoption. The aim of this paper is to help shed light on the realities of adoption and all of its complicated beauty. Adoption displays the heart of God as a broken, beautiful picture of belonging. Adoption begins with brokenness. Brokenness might include death, poverty, abandonment, or rejection, which may lead to loss of home, identity, history, security, and family. Brokenness is painful, confusing, isolating, and complicated. Adoption is beautiful. Adoption reveals the heart of God for broken people, and the beauty of God's heart towards orphans is seen throughout Scripture in the lives of His people. Adoption is about belonging. Adoption is a picture of strangers being made sons or daughters. Adoption gives home, identity, story, security, and family to those without. The world is full of confusion in the topic of adoption. The confusion can lead to hurtful comments or questions. God's people are called to think clearly and biblically. Understanding God's heart helps people discuss the realities of adoption and all of its complicated beauty. First of all, I'd like to thank my personal judge and my panel judges for taking time out of their day. I'm ready.
And great topic. It's not just something that's important to you, it's something that's important to this culture right now. It's changing right now with different current events. So, great job. So, first question, why'd you choose this topic?
Adoption is a very interesting topic, and I really loved researching adoption and how many kinds of adoption there is, and I'm also adopted.
Can you tell me more about your experience being adopted?
Yeah, so I was born in Guatemala, March 11th, 2006. I was surrendered at birth. My parents had already applied for adoption. I lived in 2 different foster homes until my parents picked me up. We were matched when I was 3 weeks old. I was 15 months when they brought me home. Verben was 2.5. Gabriel was 3 months old. We were all in diapers together. I was shy and a picky eater. I was scared of lots of stuff, including animals and water. But look at where I am now. My parents always talked about adoption, so I don't ever remember thinking it was weird or different. It's just the way of life. I got to go back to visit Guatemala a few years ago. It was pretty cool to see the culture and meet the people and hear the language, but the food was pretty gross. I prefer pizza and cheeseburgers.
Did you find anything in your research that kind of helped you explain anything in your own personal life, or anything in sources that kind of stuck out to you?
Well, when I was researching, I had no idea there's different kinds of adoption, such as domestic adoption, open, close, and semi-adoption. I had no idea that was a thing because I never really thought of white parents being with white kids and then the opposite. So I thought that was pretty weird until I researched it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big issue. Is there, obviously, writing a paper, that's important. That's something you can do. Is there anything else you hope to do or plan to do in the future to help with this?
I definitely want to talk to people about my story, or talk to adopted kids, and pray that Christian adults will step up and help adopt.
You kind of answered my next question there. Is there anything that everybody else can do?
Definitely pray and consider whether adoption is right for you.
Thank you. That's it.
Jaden, every time you talk, I love it. It's coming straight from your heart, very honest, very sincere, and you deliver it very effectively. The paper's no different. I've just got a few comments with one question at the end. Number one, this is an excellent direct paper on the trials and complexities of adoption, while pointing out its priceless reward. It's very important, informative to all the different types of adoption. It's an incredibly insightful paper, which I feel this could be a how-to guide for adoptive parents. You probably add a few more pages, and I think it would really benefit parents that have either done this or they're considering it. The way that you specifically address grieving and security is very insightful, because I was reading that and I would have done the exact thing. But really, we should commiserate, have empathy, and allow the child to grieve and do it with them and be there for them. So very insightful. Which kind of brings me, one last comment. I really like your conclusion with a very powerful call to action statement on the last sentence. Every believer should consider what his or her role should be in reflecting God's heart through the broken, beautiful picture of adoption. Wow. So very powerful, and I really, really liked it. The only question I have is when I'm studying something, I always, I don't want a book written by a PhD or a scholar or something like that. I like the books that are written by somebody that was actually at that experience that I'm curious of. Given that, in the research that you were doing and all your sources, I'm just curious, did you find any statements that were being made in your sources that, as an adopted child yourself, that you were like, boy, no, that doesn't sound right to me, or that's not what my experience was? Did anything like that happen?
Well, as you probably know, I was adopted at a young age, so I don't feel like I got mistreated or anything when I was living in America, but I know other kids do.
Okay. All right. Well,
I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
that's pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Okay. That's all I got.
Like researching? Or
Research.
not really. Adoption is something I feel very strong about, and hope every kid off the side of the road or an orphan just gets adopted, and hopefully they go to Christian homes. But when I stuck to adoption, and I feel like, I guess I was asking questions, but I feel like it would totally wouldn't totally make me change my mind about anything. What are my thoughts on how I feel about it?
Yeah.
I guess I would think that they should stay in their culture, but I definitely would want them to have families, good families. But I had no idea there's over 500,000 kids in Guatemala that wasn't adopted. So definitely glad that my parents adopted me and took me to America with the rest of my siblings. But I guess some people do argue whether you should take kids out of their homes, and I'm not sure how else to answer that.
Okay. Yeah. My last question for now, I guess, would be, you mentioned a little bit, well, how do you see yourself going forward, taking this information, sharing it? Do you have an idea of what you would, you want to share it in a certain way? will you be quick to speak to this topic in other places?
I'm not really sure what I would do with this, but I would definitely encourage young adults, or no, not young adults, married adults, to think about adoption and definitely look into it.
Play.
Like if you're not allowed to adopt kids or something.
I don't have any adopted children in my family. What role can I play then in encouraging adoption or being there for other families? Any thoughts on that? Outside of just adopting?
Well, I would say, even though the cost is very high to adopt, I feel like every family should consider to adopt. I don't really think we got much into the attitudes and what the children thought, like semi-closed, open, semi-adoption, open adoption, and closed adoption. We didn't really get to that research, so I don't know what to say about it.
Having your paper there?
Yeah. Adoption is as old as families. Throughout history, families have taken in and raised child of their own. The Bible tells of Moses, who was a Hebrew, that was saved from death and raised by Pharaoh's daughter. And the Bible also tells about Esther, a Jewish girl who was raised by the older cousin Mordecai before becoming queen of Persia. Caesar Augustus was the nephew of Julius Caesar, but was raised as his son and heir. History tells the early Christians who were known for taking in sick and abandoned babies and raising them as their own. History is filled with stories of adoption, including those of John Hancock, Babe Ruth, Eleanor Roosevelt, Nelson Mandela, and Simone Biles. The act or processes of establishing a legal relationship between a child and a parent other than the child's biological parent, thereby entrusting the designed adult with responsibility for raising the child. Dictionary.com.
Okay, with that definition of adoption in mind, this is going to be hard question, you don't have to have an answer, but do you think that any people shouldn't be allowed to adopt? Do you think that adoption should not be open to all people?
That is a hard question. I'm not really sure. I feel like everybody should help adopt, but I know there's the gay and lesbians. The gay and lesbian couples should not be able to adopt, even though if they want to help. I feel like it wouldn't show love for two dads or two moms, but between a mom, a dad, and a child. I feel like that's not really love and how God shows love.
Like something that you learned more about as you went about writing your paper?
I personally haven't struggled with a lot with loss, grief, and longing of adoption. I learned that a lot of adoptive kids do struggle, and there are lots of helpful resources.
Alright, we're going to open up to the audience. If anybody in the audience has a question for Jaden, he just has a couple minutes left of his time. So raise your hand if you have a question. You want to call on somebody, Jaden? You know everybody in this room, so call on who you would like to.
Jacob.
What's the difference between the different adoptions?
So international adoption, I think you already know, is from a different country. Open adoption is, I believe, when you have contact with the birth parents. Semi-closed is where you have little contact with the birth parents, and then the closed adoption is where you have no contact with the birth parents whatsoever.
Which of those three would you choose?
For open, closed, and semi-closed? I'm not really sure. I guess that's really a hard question. I don't think. Yeah, I'm not really sure because I definitely would love to talk to my birth parents, but I also knew that they couldn't afford me or like stuff like that. So I definitely don't know if I would want to talk to them after they put me up through adoption.
So I'm really proud of you, and it's really neat to see you standing up there right now. I remember you coming and you explained your fear of water and animals and me and pretty much everything. And I'm really proud to see you standing there and writing the paper that you're writing. That's a great encouragement to me. My question is, when it takes a village to raise any child. And when I look around the room, I just see people who have poured into your life and have gotten around families that are adopting, and together have allowed you to be who you are, the man that you are. And now that you're 18 and a young man yourself, my question is, how do you engage your encouragement to all of us to consider adoption? What do you think that looks like for your life as an 18-year-old young man, and as you look to the future? How are you going to do and integrate this into your life?
Yeah, so I definitely want to talk to people who's adoptive kids, and then it just depends on who I marry. If they want to adopt, and if they don't, then that's their problem. But yeah.
All right, so there's that.
John, are you the last one?
I got you. What are you trying to persuade us to believe?
My conclusion says it best on page 13. Every believer should think biblically about adoption. Every believer should enter into the uncomfortable conversations about adoption. Every believer should consider what his or her role should be in reflecting God's heart through a broken, beautiful picture of adoption.